What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane. That's Cole Latshaw. St. John's heads into the Christmas holiday week with no presents to hand out and no fun to have. Just like they did head into Thanksgiving, they throw a dud against, this time, Kentucky in Atlanta. Their struggle in the non-conference against high major opponents continues. Cole, how you feeling today?
Not great. St. John's ruined Thanksgiving for us out in Las Vegas. Now they're doing their best to ruin Christmas. Obviously, you finish, besides the Harvard game tomorrow, you finish the majority of your out-of-conference slate without any real key wins. You're barely holding on to one quad one win over Baylor. But, you know, we said you really wanted to win 4 or 5 of those big out-of-conference games. Instead, you only walk away with 2. That's not particularly great. And, you know, you hope maybe Ole Miss can surprise some people and end up being a little bit better than we think they are. But I'm not going to hold my breath on them performing well in the SEC. And, you know, hopefully Baylor can more firm up that game being a quad one win. But you're really going to have to do a lot of damage here in the Big East. I think the Big East is really down. You're not going to have a ton of quad one opportunities there either. We'll get into sort of break down the Kentucky game. I'll let pessimistic Cole off the leash a little bit and let him whine and complain. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, I still feel very confident that this is a tournament team. I mean, there is a scenario now that we've opened up where they don't even make the tournament, but I still am super confident that this team will make the tournament. I think, unfortunately, now gone are the possibilities of a 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe probably even a 5 seed. So, you know, what's the goal here? We said at the beginning of the season that anything less than a Sweet 16 is a failure of a season. Well, you know, you wanted to set yourself up for the best chance of that by being a 1 seed, by being a 2 seed. And instead you go from the 5th ranked team in the preseason to now being unranked as we sit here on December 22nd. So just a real tough fall from grace. I think, you know, that you can't really argue with anybody that says St. John's is one of the most disappointing teams in the nation at this point.
Yep. And, you know, I feel for the St. John's faithful who did make the visit out to Atlanta and those like Cole who made it out to Vegas for some disappointing outings so far. St. John's falls out of the AP ranking and out of the coaches poll ranking this week. Still receiving votes, still right there knocking on the doorstep, but disappointing nonetheless. I will remind folks, and I'll remind Cole, that St. John's was not ranked heading into the Big East season last year, or heading into Christmas. We do have one Big East win right now against DePaul. But, yeah, it's going to be a harder hill to climb. Obviously, last year we swept UConn, and if we were to do that this year, those wins would mean a lot more than they did mean last year. So there's an opportunity still. You know, there's games still to be played, and you can avoid all these losses. You can keep climbing. Who knows how high you could reach. But, of course, I think it's going to take an 18-2 type season again in the Big East with wins, at least one over UConn, to even be considered for a top 3 seed this season. But, hey, why not go out there and see what happens if you are able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, those two. When I say not thinking we have a real strong possibility for a 1 through 5 seed, I'm assuming 2 losses to UConn. I mean, there are still other quad one opportunities, I think, coming up even immediately. We have the road game against Butler. We have a road game against Creighton that right now are both quad one opportunities. So you do have some resume building wins available, and obviously 2 shots, at least 2, if not another one in the Big East tournament against UConn. So you get one of those at any point, and that's a huge resume boosting win.
Yeah, real quick, while we're on the Big East topic, I saw Creighton slid all the way up to, I think, 58th in the net after they were close to 100th with a couple of big East wins. So the metrics do play a big part. I guess that's good news for the Big East if our upper middle pack can kind of bury the lower bottom and kind of get a couple more teams inching closer to first or quad one or quad 2 wins. Like you said, that Creighton road win a couple weeks ago wouldn't be considered a quad 1 game. Now it's looking at it as another opportunity. So good chance, or it's good to have those chances. Who knows how many we'll finish with. But let's talk more about the Kentucky game, Cole. I'd hate to be your TV room, hate to be that couch in there during that second half. You know, just your quick thoughts. You know, what went wrong? What didn't happen? What St. John's has to get better at?
Well, I mean, we can talk all day about the point guard position. I think that's one of 2 glaring issues. The other one being getting defensive rebounds and not giving opponents second, third, fourth, fifth chance opportunities. But the point guard, I don't really know how you resolve this. Rick Pitino had some great post-game comments to Roger Rubin was one who got a little bit of a testy response from Rick in a response to asking Rick about his before the season comments about the point guard position being dead in college basketball. And Rick basically said, well, what do you want me to say? And he's trying to make, basically now letting us know that was kind of a cope answer, that he was trying to make chicken salad out of chicken, what. But they didn't have a point guard. They missed on at least 4 different guys that they were going after. And Dylan Darling was brought in with the assumption of him being a backup point guard. We've talked a bunch about Dylan Darling and what he does on the court. And I've said previously, I think he's the most important player on the roster as far as handling the ball and getting the players into the right spots and running, being a true point guard, a floor general out there. But that's not me saying that I think he's a Big East caliber point guard. That's just an indictment on the rest of the players on the roster, that I don't think anybody is as good at doing that as Dylan Darling. Rick basically now said that was the original thought, that he was supposed to be a great, tremendous backup point guard, but not have to be the lead guy. We see him have another rough game as far as not being able to defend without fouling. Really only plays like 8 minutes against Kentucky. Ian Jackson is improving every single day at playing point guard, but Rick again said in the post game, it's not his natural position. He should be playing the 2 guard. Like they just don't have a point guard. I jokingly wish that we could bring in some guy from the G League as a mid-season, transfer addition, but which now seems to be somehow becoming a regular occurrence in this Wild West college basketball era that we live in. But I think that was a huge issue. You had just another point guard absolutely bury us low after coming back and missing the entire first half with re-injuring that shoulder. Comes back and has a tremendous second half. Me and Pat were talking beforehand. It's also the most St. John's thing ever to have a huge out-of-conference opponent really underperform all season long so far, and then coming right at the end of the conference schedule, we play them. They get fully healthy. Jaden Quintance, who's arguably their best player, their best transfer addition, comes back fully healthy from an ACL tear and looks like an absolute world beater in limited minutes. Unstoppable force down low. I think he had 8 and 6 in 14 minutes, which is insane per 40 numbers. It's just, between giving up offensive rebounds and the point guard position being a problem, like that, those are the 2 things that jump out to me.
All right, Colin, we're going to go deeper into the rebounding situation later, but while we're talking point guard stuff, I want to hear from you, your thoughts on Ian Jackson. You mentioned quick that he's playing better. Last 3 games, he's scored in double figures each of those 3 games. He's got a positive assist to turnover ratio, albeit just barely 7 assists to 6 turnovers over those 3 games, but getting more and more comfortable making some plays, not just as a scorer, but as a playmaker. Led us defensive rebounding against Kentucky. Improvement all around, still some ways to go, but your thoughts?
Yeah, Rick mentioned in the post-game presser that he's getting better every single day. We talked, I think, after the Ole Miss game about Ian Jackson having some really nice passes, maybe not getting the actual assists, but almost those hockey assists, looking better at distributing the ball. He had a few really nice pick and rolls with Ruben, who just shout out to Ruben Prey. I thought played tremendous against Kentucky, was probably one of the highlights of the game. But yeah, I think Ian is settling into this role as potential point guard, and I think he's getting better at it. But unfortunately, you're a third of the season, if not more, over with. You don't have a ton of time to keep letting him feel this out and figure it out. But I think your ceiling's just so much lower if Dylan Darling's forced to be really your only point guard on the roster. Our only hope here is that Ian Jackson can figure this out and become the main point guard and let Dylan Darling become a guy off the bench.
Are you going to say anything about the 3-point shots that Dylan?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did want to say that. I've been dragging him all season. I think since we last spoke, his 3-point percentage has now gone from 3% over 20% now. So,
and rising.
Kudos to Dylan Darling for being open to take coaching. Obviously, the last game when Dylan really underperformed, I think, was Iona. Rick mentioned needing to get him right. And obviously in that time between the Iona and the DePaul game, They were in the lab fixing the shot, and he had a tremendous game against DePaul. Is looking much more confident at taking that 3-point shot and obviously making it as well. And I think that opens up so much more for his game if teams have to respect him out at the 3-point line. So really, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to give Dylan kudos, because it's obviously he was open to the coaching, and obviously
shot doctor Rick Pitino. Put your zebra shorts on. Was it a block or was it a charge in that second half?
I thought his feet were moving. I thought that was a
Well,
block.
the feet can be moving if you take it square. You know, I think it was a bang bang. I'm not surprised he didn't get it. But I feel like he's on a little bit of a run now of not getting that, where we might be due for 1 or 2 charges coming up. So be aware, Big East foes and Harvard.
I think one of the other issues, we talked about defensive rebounding. We talked about the point guard position. Let me ask your opinion of Bryce Hopkins, who's been getting a lot of slack. Rick Pitino took one of his stars to task about needing to develop more of an alpha mentality. We saw how amazing he played really in that first 5 or 6 games up until pretty much the Baylor game out in Vegas. He was dominating, scoring 20 points a night. Now he's really fallen off these last couple games. I think we need a little bit more. I think finished with 13 points against Kentucky, but really 8 of those points were once the game was already decided. So kind of soft numbers there. What do you think the problem is with Bryce Hopkins?
Well, you've heard me say this about plenty of guys. You know, for me, it's your scoring's great, but it's what else are you doing? And if he was hounding down boards, playing with energy, and still showing some struggles that he's shown recently offensively, I could live with it. It's the fact that this team is right now hollow inside, and he's a guy. Cole said firsthand, look right up, on the floor level, that he's as big as Zuby, if not bigger, physically. So we're struggling on the boards big time. And Bryce has shown in the past that Providence was a beast on the defensive boards, over 20% defensive rebounding rate for his career there. Now he's got a defensive rebounding percentage that's lower than Ian Jackson and Dylan Darling. So a complete opposite there. And a hole that if we plug, I think we could really significantly improve our team. So it's frustrating to watch. I hate to blame the guy's motor. He's got injury issues. So there's more than one, situation at play here. Rick's pushing buttons, pulling strings. We'll see if he's got some magic there. I don't know if he can fix this in one day like he fixed Dylan Darling's jump shot. But we got a little bit more than one day left in the season, so hopefully he can.
Yeah, we joked a lot about my affinity for having multiple bigs on the court at one time. Last year, I was really pulling for that Vinci Wachuku and Zuby on the court together lineup at one time. This year, I was so excited preseason about the idea of the quote unquote triple towers, trademark Red Storm Rapid Reaction podcast. Dylan Mitchell, Zuby, and Bryce Hopkins all being on the court together at the same time. But when I say I want to have all those guys on the court at one time, that's under the assumption that we're going to completely dominate the defensive glass, that we're not going to be giving these teams these second chance opportunities, which we haven't done this year. We've had those guys out on the court together for a large amount of time, and yet still we're one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the entire country. So what you're doing in my hope of having those 3 guys on the court and dominating the defensive glass, you're going to take that advantage of being a real big team and getting all the defensive rebounds, but you're going to sacrifice offensive spacing. But I'm okay with that when we're dominating the glass. Instead, we're not dominating the glass and you're still sacrificing the spacing. I think this Kentucky game was the first time I really noticed a lot of spacing issues with all the bigs being out there on the court at the same time. You could see Bryce Hopkins with the ball in his hand trying to take the ball to the rim, but then Zuby would be in the paint posting up. So he kind of pulls his dribble back out and is standing on the 3-point line. I don't want to see, as much as I love the triple towers, is fun, cool little phrase we came up with, as much as I want to see them out there on the court at the same time, if we're going to sacrifice spacing like that at the offensive end and not pull down every defensive rebound, then get them, break this up, like get them all, not on the court at the same time, because it doesn't work if you're not dominating the glass.
End of the triple tower era. Oh man, Cole. Yeah, and on that note, maybe it's something Coach Pitino is thinking about to try to space out, try to create more spacing. I didn't love to see these stats, but, it could be because of this. Those 2 guys, Zuby and Hopkins, are, starting power forwards. They combined for 8 3-point attempts. They only had 8 rebounds. where our starting point guard and shooting guard Sellers and Jackson combined for 6 3-point attempts. So that's kind of a backwards number. You'd think hopefully we've thrown out the number 15 for those three combined. So 6 for those two starting. Playing over 60 minutes is way too low. Are they not getting those 3-point attempts in part because we're not getting the spacing we need? And does that go back to what you just said? Our bigs clogging up the middle, not allowing for our guards to get, closeouts from defenders having to pinch in for help. So it could all be tied together. And if
you mentioned earlier, Ian Jackson leading the team against Kentucky in rebounds with 6. Six rebounds. The team has 17 defensive rebounds. Bryce Hopkins, Zuby Ejiofor, and Dylan Mitchell combined for 6 of those 17 defensive rebounds. That's, again, another just backwards thing. I don't want those 3 guys shooting more 3-pointers than the guards, and I don't want the guards having more defensive rebounds than those 3 guys.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. I mean, I'm going to throw up some graphics here. You talk about rebounding. Let's go ahead and talk about the numbers. Some real disgusting stuff here. Kentucky first, just on an individual level, 39 rebounds overall, 16 offensive, 48% of Kentucky's misses were rebounded by them. So, close to half. Doesn't matter how many stops you get. If you're going to give them 2 chances, you're going to be playing catch up, and you had a lead early. It dissipated, and then obviously hard to play catch up when you're giving teams 2 looks at it, maybe even three looks each time down.
Yeah. That's just an embarrassing number. 48% of their misses, they're pulling in offensive rebounds. It's almost hard to believe.
Well, 48% versus Kentucky. Versus Iowa State, it was 49%. Versus Baylor, it was 53%. That's in a win. Versus Auburn, it was 50%. So it's not just a one-game story, unfortunately. And I've said before, I think we've got the pieces to be a good defensive rebounding team. Ruben Prey, as much as I like his play, and I think I've been in his corner for more minutes, he's not getting the job done as a defensive rebounder right now. But neither are the guys that he's not getting minutes over. So I think we've got a roster to improve there, but until we do it, it's me just kind of hoping and praying.
It's amazing that you beat Baylor giving up that many offensive rebounds and that you were within 1 point of a really good Iowa State team giving up that many rebounds.
Yeah, I mean, here it is. Looking at it as more of a long season stuff. All of our out of conference games versus high majors, on average, 40 rebounds a game, 16 offensive rebounds a game, and on average in those 6 games, 44% of misses they're getting rebounding. So it's not just an Iowa State or a Kentucky game. It's an out of conference high major problem that St. John's really has to fix. But you can see, for the season even, we're still giving up 37%. That's, being buoyed big time by those high major teams killing us, but still 37% is an unfortunate number as is. We got to be looking to get to 33, something like that, and competing. Because if we're doing a good enough job, as you see to the box on the right, stopping teams from hitting their initial shot, 30% from 3 given up against high majors is a pretty good number. It's not a good enough number if they're going to collect 44% of those misses and go at it again. But I think what this shows you is there's a collection of pieces here who can have a good enough team defensively. I think you've heard Rick speak highly of his team's defense lately, especially in the first half of last night, or in the first half of the Kentucky game and, previous games before then. But it's the rebounding to me. I'm going to continue to put my hat on and say if we can fix that, and I believe we can fix that, we've still got a chance to make some serious noise come March.
And I think I would have told you preseason that we were going to see as much of the triple towers on the court together at one time as we have, but yet also tell you that stat's going to exist against high majors. 44% of their misses are going to be corralled for offensive rebounds. You wouldn't have believed me.
No,
it's hard to believe that with that much height on the court, you're giving up that many offensive rebounds.
No, I'm right there with you thinking that same thing. And I think we've seen less and less Mitchell and Hopkins on the court together, as the season has gone on. I don't really think Rick has figured out what he wants with his front court rotation, how he wants to figure out Prey minutes. But Do you start to consider playing Prey and Zuby together as part of your big duo lineup, your real twin tower lineup? Really get Cole excited because if he might be just as much of a threat as Hopkins to catch and shoot on a pick and pop. I don't think he really is quite that level of a closeout threat, but he can at least shoot it. If he's wide open, he's going to have to be guarded. Can he take three threes in 20 minutes of action and be a threat to make one or two of them? And can he be better on the boards? I would look there. And maybe at the very least, you motivate Hopkins into playing harder and the rebounding by taking some of his minutes.
On Dave's newest episode on the Eye on the Storm podcast, Kevin Connolly brought up that exact point of how much physicality you seem to be missing. And Ruben didn't really play in the Kentucky game after he got the double technical and called for a flagrant foul. He was kind of glued to the bench there after that, and how much physicality you kind of lost once Ruben came out of the game. And Kevin floated the idea of maybe you seriously take a hard look at Zuby and Ruben Prey on the court at the same time. Because ultimately, as much as we love Zuby, he does struggle on the defensive glass, obviously excels with offensive rebounding for the last 2 years. But he is ultimately an undersized center. I think he's listed at 6'8". That might be a little generous. He's certainly incredibly muscular, but when you have him going up against a guy like Jaden Acquaintance, who's I think 7 foot, 6'11", and beefy as can be, I mean, there's a clear disadvantage for Zuby at his height there, and Ruben adds some additional height there. I think the afro might add maybe 3 or 4 additional inches on top of how tall he is, but you lost a lot of physicality when Ruben went to the bench. I thought he was playing really well against Kentucky,
and continued to shown to be a really capable passer, high low, makes some good passes nearly every game. So I'd like to see Ruben get some more minutes and maybe even a lot more minutes. We'll look at the box score quick, see what stood out, if anything, to Cole. Our shooting from first half to second half didn't change much, but Kentucky really got going in the second half. Are you worried still about our three-point shooting? I know we had kind of got on a little better track. Maybe it was the competition level tonight or against Kentucky. I'm sorry. You see Josan 0 for 2 from 3, 0 for 1 for Sellers, 2 for 5 for Ian Jackson. So only 8 threes combined from them, 2 for 8. Plenty of minutes played. What do you think currently where we stand with our perimeter threat?
Yeah, you just hit on it. I'm worried about who's taking the 3-point shots. I don't want Isaiah Sellers only taking 1 3-pointer in a game against a really important out of conference opponent in Kentucky. Like, he needed to be taking 5 3-pointers. Same thing with Josan. I don't need Zuby Ejiofor shooting 5 3-point shots in a game. I don't need. I mean, it's great that he's able to show that ability, and then that forces teams to step out on him when he's out there. But he shouldn't be jacking up 5 3-pointers when Isaiah Sellers is only shooting 1.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned about the length against him in the paint, 2 for 6 from inside the arc for Zuby. That's just not good enough. Bryce, you said 8 points late. So aside from that, really 5 points on 3 for 10 shooting. Didn't really get the job done. Darling hit the one shot he took. Lefty didn't take a shot in the 6 minutes he got. Lefty got some run today against Kentucky. I'm sure some fans were surprised there. Ruben only 11 and a half minutes, but seemingly had the most presence in those 11 and a half minutes. Do you think Rick benched him for that foul late? Well,
I think I don't think he re-entered the game after the flagrant and the double technical until the game was pretty much decided in the end of the second half. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was a benching or just the way minutes were working out that he couldn't find a way to get Ruben back in the game, but I thought he looked really good and was able to bang physically with Kentucky in that first half, and then unfortunately didn't really get a lot of burn in the second.
Yep. I thought that the charge call against Darling was kind of the end of the road. We could really feel the game going the wrong direction right then. Not quite bang bang. I think we both thought it was the right call, but it could have gone each way. We've seen worse calls definitely go against St. John's, but goes to Cole's point. What are you doing playing Kentucky and Atlanta if you got the choice? Who knows if we did or not? Obviously, you take the big game against Kentucky, you have to make some concessions for it.
And kudos to Kentucky for traveling that well to Atlanta. I mean, their fans were loud. That place seemed 95% Kentucky fans opposed to St. John's fans. So I don't really understand the thought process there, like wanting to play them there opposed to just playing them at Rupp. But I'm assuming we didn't really have a choice in that matter. That was probably a Kentucky call.
Right.
So Pat, let me ask you, we touched a little bit about it, like what we think is probable for the rest of the season and, kind of where you can land seed wise. I think you're probably in agreement with me that this is still a tournament team unless things go catastrophically wrong. But like, how do you see things playing out here the rest of the way? Like, what are you thinking now, seeing a lot of the other Big East teams play their out of conference schedule? How do you think we stack up, with the rest of the conference? What do you think they need to do to kind of get to where we need them to be able to have a smooth as possible pass to get into hopefully that Sweet 16? And then, who knows what happens after that.
Well, I think you got a lot of Big East teams probably licking their chops, looking at St. John's now as, very much beatable. And I don't think people like us very much. And, why should they? St. John's kind of made their statement last year and have been brash about it. And obviously everyone likes to see a guy down when they're, licking their wounds and stuff like that. So I think St. John's has got to be ready on just an individual level. These games, even against the lesser teams in the Big East, they're going to be getting their best shot. So no rest for the weary here for St. John's. I think we're about to get on a little bit of a roll here, starting tomorrow with Harvard. And then, we don't see UConn for, 10 conference games further than that. I can pull up the schedule real quick. But I think St. John's is going to start to get on a roll. They're right on the bottom of the polls again, so I think it won't be long till they re-enter it. Maybe 2 weeks if you take care of business for these first 2 weeks of conference play. I want to see them dominate a team, a quality team. So let's see. Harvard at Georgetown, home versus Providence. Georgetown, after looking decent to start the season, has really gone backwards. Obviously not completely healthy. If you saw Coach Schooley's got a couple issues other than his team's play right now, maybe even a lawsuit on his hands.
Hitting a kid in the dome with a water bottle.
I don't know what that was. Was it an Aquafina or Dasani? Those Dasanis are pretty hard, so that might have been tough. But I think Harvard, Georgetown, Providence, 3 games you should come out looking really good. Not just 3-0, but feeling good about yourself, playing good basketball. And 10-4 looks a lot better than 7-4. And then you get a home game versus Providence, and I don't know what they'll do in this time being, but Providence has talent. They've struggled. Their coach obviously is looking more and more like he's sitting on a really hot seat right now. But I think you're going to have chances here to show your mettle against some better teams. If you do that, your record starts to improve. You get back in the polls. People seem to forget about your early season struggles. It looks more just like on your schedule, you played a good team and you lost, as opposed to, damn, what's wrong with this team? They can't get a win. You got to start changing that picture though. Right now, the picture is a little bit too clear for everyone who's not directly in the Big East's corner. This just thinking about St. John's right now is, damn, they can't beat a quality team. So you got to change people's minds there. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to do it now solely against Big East teams, which is harder to change people's minds when that's the case.
Yeah, fully in agreement with you. I mean, I still think there's a really hot start possible until you get to that February 6th game against UConn at home at MSG. But I think that, there's a chance you can really start to put together, some good wins. You got the road game against Butler. You got the road game against Creighton. So, I mean, those could be 2 good wins that can really get you feeling good about yourself. So, I mean, I still think 16-4, 17-3 in conference play, that's fully on the table. I think you're gonna still get some quality wins there, even if you lost both of the UConn games. I like I mentioned before, I still think this is a tournament team. I just hope that somehow we can fight our way to getting into a really good seed, so that you feel better about winning 2 games. If you end up being an 8-9 seed and your second game is going to be against a 1 seed, you get bounced after winning 1 game in the tournament. Again, this year, I don't know how good I feel about this program long term. I mean, Rick Pitino said in his introductory press conference, St. John's is going to be back to winning and winning big. I mean, we're in his 6-year contract. We're supposed to be sort of changing the narrative around this program back to being considered in that blue blood-ish level. And, if you're half of the way through that contract and all you have to show for it is 2 tournament wins, that doesn't make me feel real rosy with an aging coach who's no spring chicken and could retire at any day. Ultimately, you're thankful that you got Mike Rapoli money to spend, but Rick Pitino needs to be changing the narrative around this university and not simply just getting in a tournament and winning a game. That's not a successful season. So
let me ask you this. If I gave you the options, you could choose. St. John's could either be a 4 seed, a 6 seed, a 10 seed, or a 12 seed. The 12 seed's playing in Dayton. What would you choose? And is it as straightforward as just saying you're taking the 4 seed?
Yeah, probably. It's as straightforward as saying that. I mean, I don't think I would want to be a 10 seed and then have to beat a 7 just to be able to play a 2 in the second round. I obviously, like I just said, I want nothing to do with an 8-9 seed and having to play a 1 in the second round. I think probably the answer is that 4 seed, but I don't even know how realistic that is right now with what we have on the table, unless we beat a UConn.
I was really just overthinking it, seeing what you'd think. But to me, that 6 seed, you stay away from that one side of the bracket. Mm-hmm. You avoid that 1 if you are to win your first round. And it's no given a 6 is playing a tougher game than a 4 is. But I'd rather be in that 6-3 game than that 4-5 game, which then plays the winner of the 1-8. You can avoid that 1. So there's just different ways to look at it. St. John's might be looking at a better path come March than you can script it if you happen to be a better seed. So
you never know how the stuff's going to shake out. A 1 seed could lose in the second round to an 8 seed or something like that, and all of a sudden you got a real clear path for a deep run. So, getting in is obviously the most important thing. I don't think we have any concerns there as far as getting in, but we really need to start building a resume here, and we've really put ourselves behind the 8 ball by this out of conference performance.
Are you going to be tuning in tomorrow night, Cole?
We will be 23.5 point favorites against Harvard. I think that's some bad news for Harvard.
Yep, it's a Crimson Christmas for St. John's. Hopefully they can, start getting things going in the right direction. But anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a happy holiday. We'll tune in and we'll bring you a recap of the Harvard game as quick as we can. We apologize for the delay here. Life got in the way for the two of us over here. But anyway, until next time, I'm Pat Kane. That's Cole Atshaw. This is the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. Peace.